Now, what are LLMs or large language models? We'll do a quick cursory overview of them as it relates to this course. So, again, this will not be a complete deep dive. But in essence, an LLM is a deep learning system that is used to generate human like text output. That's really it. The idea here is it can understand prompts, it can understand nuances on your questions, it generates text, answers, summaries, code, and more. And it's primarily used in chatbots, writing tools, and in a lot of different applications like customer support, education, etc. The idea behind LLMs is that you have a corpus of text. The LLM or the model is trained on that corpus of text to look at different inputs and predict outputs. And then it just predicts the output for you based on certain inputs that you provide, which are called prompts. Okay. So it trains on text. It's trained on a huge amount, what we call a corpus of books, websites, things like that. There's also a lot of controversy that it's being trained on proprietary information and copyrighted information. Um, the idea behind it is that it predicts the next word in a series of words. Again, it's this is a big oversimplification, but the idea here is if you give it some words like the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy blank, then it'll basically determine based on this corpus of text where it's seen that before, what is the most likely outcome or prediction of the next word, which is dog. Now, that is a big oversimplification of LLMs and how they work. And there's lots of reinforcement learning that happens as well. But the idea, again, is you have a corpus of text, and the idea here is that it's just predicting the next output. That's why LLMs are known to have no real inherent understanding of what it's creating. It's just kind of predicting the next word. Now, even that is an oversimplification because there are some great reasoning models out there where the idea is, similar to how your brain works. If you give it one complex problem, your brain's not going to be able to solve it. It's not smart enough for that. But what it does do is that it breaks that apart into very, very little tiny problems, which it solves in sequence that then end up solving the big problem. That's how these works as well. So LLMs don't have an inherent reasoning capability, but they're able to do a lot of small tasks very quickly and very well, so that in sequence and together, it looks like they are doing very well reasoning. There's a great website called LLMs.com. Let me see if I can just bring it up. I always look at this on a daily basis because it changes so much. But it's basically a big leaderboard that compares different AI models and how they work. So you can see, for example, the different AI models that are out there, whether they're proprietary or not, their context length, which basically measures how much of a prompt you can put into it before it fails, their input tokens and output token price. So this is how expensive a model is to run. And then these are different scores of the model. You have your GPQA, MMLU. These are basically different scores. And certain models are multimodal as well. Like certain models can accept images and audio in addition to just text. Okay, so this is a great website to go to kind of see the different benchmarks of different models. Different models have different strengths and weaknesses. But no matter what LLM you use, LLMs have limitations. And there's two big limitations, okay? The first big limitation is specific knowledge. LLMs are trained on a corpus of text, and they only have knowledge limited to that corpus of text. So, if the corpus of text cuts off at, December 2024, then the LLM will not be able to answer any questions beyond December 2024 because it has no knowledge of that. It's not being trained on that. It also does not have any knowledge on information it's not trained on if it's even before December 2024, if it's not part of the corpus of text. So OpenAI, for example, is trained on the corpus of text in the public internet, but an LLM won't be able to answer questions related to your customer data, what you had for lunch. It won't be able to answer, your product's information or your information related to your business, assuming it's not part of the larger corpus of text. And because of that, LLMs are great at language understanding, but they're not necessarily the best at providing the most accurate information, especially if it's A, past the cutoff date, and B, not part of the corpus of publicly available online text. So that's a huge limitation for LLMs. Another big limitations is that LLMs can perform things like generating text, generating images, generating audio, but they can't take actions on your behalf. So they can help you craft a amazingly worded email, but they can't send the email for you. They can craft an amazingly crafted LinkedIn post, but they actually can't submit the LinkedIn post for you. They can come up with a great plan to make a sandwich, but they actually can't make that sandwich for you. They are limited severely in their use case based on that. They can only generate content. So there's been a lot of avenues to address these two big limitations. The first of which, for specific knowledge, is to use a technique called RAG, which we'll talk about in a later video. The idea behind RAG is you can basically feed in context an LLM certain knowledge that it should have and instruct the LLM to use that specific knowledge to answer questions. So if you want to use an LLM to answer questions related to your product information, you can inject that product information into the LLM's prompt, and then the LLM will answer the question based on that information, not based on its training and understanding that it's had before. Second is actions. There's been a big proliferation, especially these days, in connecting tools or MCPs or agents to LLMs. The idea here is when an LLM does something, it can actually use an API or a tool to do that thing for you instead of just generating the content. So in my example of sending emails, it not only generates the email content, but it generates the input to the email API that is needed to then send an email across. It doesn't only create the LinkedIn post, but it also creates the input to the LinkedIn post required. It creates the input to the API required to then submit a LinkedIn post. So it's able to create and interact with APIs that give LLMs the ability to perform actions, which is a big, big breakthrough. Now, looking back at it, if you have a knowledge-based system, if you have a way for LLMs to perform actions, and if you have the original LLM itself, well, that's what an agent is. An agent is a combination of an LLM, a knowledge base, and a set of tools that enable a system to perform autonomous tasks without having a specific instruction set in mind. Okay? So, in summary, LLMs are simple deep learning systems that are used to generate text. They have two big limitations in how they are trained: outdated knowledge and not being able to perform actions. But there's been a lot of things that have been done to overcome those limitations. And if you take all of those things put together, that's what an agent is. All right, we'll move on to the next video.